I still remember that day as if it just happened yesterday, a day that began with excitement in my chest but slowly unfolded into one of the strangest, most haunting experiences of my life. I had been planning a surprise visit to my son, Daniel, for weeks. He had recently moved into a quiet suburban neighborhood, a place he described on the phone as peaceful, safe, and the perfect spot for him to start fresh after years of struggling with his career. He wanted independence, he wanted space, and he wanted me to trust that he was doing better. As a parent, you want to believe your children when they tell you things are fine, but deep down you always know when something feels off. That Saturday morning, I packed a small overnight bag, bought a cake from his favorite bakery, and drove with a smile on my face, imagining his reaction when he opened the door to see me standing there unannounced. But when I finally pulled up to his street, the first thing that struck me wasn't the house itself, it was the silence. Suburbs are never truly quiet. You hear kids playing, dogs barking, someone mowing a lawn, maybe a car starting. But that day, everything around Daniel's house felt unnervingly still, as if the world itself was holding its breath. I parked in his driveway, grabbed the cake, and walked up to the front door. My heart was racing with anticipation, but as soon as I knocked, something inside me shifted. The sound echoed too loudly in the still air, and no footsteps came to greet me. No cheerful, coming. No sound of movement at all. I tried again, knocking harder this time, calling out his name. Still nothing. That's when a sharp unease began crawling up my spine, whispering that something was terribly wrong. And before I take you deeper into this story, I need you to pause for a moment, because what I'm about to tell you is a ride you won't forget. So hit that subscribe button, because on Grow for Justice we share real, emotional, and unforgettable stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Now, let me take you back to that doorstep, standing there with the cake in my hands, my heart pounding harder than I wanted to admit. After a few minutes of waiting, I tried the handle. To my surprise, the door wasn't locked. My son had always been careful, always locking up no matter what. The fact that it gave way with such ease instantly heightened the fear already prickling at the back of my neck. The hinges groaned as I pushed it open, revealing an eerily tidy living room. Everything was in place, the couch, the TV, a half-finished mug of coffee on the side table. But there was no sign of Daniel. "Hello, son." My voice echoed through the empty rooms, bouncing back at me in a way that made the house feel even more deserted. I stepped inside, setting the cake down on the counter, and began checking each room. His bedroom was neatly made, the sheets tucked in, no clothes scattered on the floor. The bathroom light was off, dry towels hanging perfectly. In the kitchen, his phone charger was plugged into the wall, but the phone wasn't there. It was as though he had vanished into thin air. That's when panic began to take over, gnawing at my chest. A dozen thoughts raced through my head. Maybe he went out for groceries, maybe he was walking the dog, maybe he just forgot I was coming and had stepped out. But the quiet, that haunting, unnatural quiet told me otherwise. And then, just as I was about to check the backyard, I heard hurried footsteps pounding against the pavement outside. I turned toward the door, and in seconds, Daniel's neighbor, a middle-aged woman I recognized from one of the rare times I had visited before, came running across the lawn. Her face was pale, her eyes wide, and her breath came in sharp gasps as though she had been sprinting. "You need to get out of here," she shouted, her voice breaking in panic. "Something's wrong, something's very wrong." My heart froze in my chest, and the cake on the counter suddenly felt absurd, like a symbol of how unprepared I was for whatever I had just stepped into. The neighbor's words rattled through my mind, louder than any silence I had endured so far. "Something's very wrong." She rushed inside, not even asking permission, her hands trembling as she clutched her phone like it was a lifeline. "Where's Daniel?" she demanded. I don't know," I stammered. "I just got here." The door was open. "Everything looks normal but he's not here." She shook her head violently, glancing toward the windows as if she expected something, or someone, to appear at any second. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. "Last night, I heard shouting from this house. I thought maybe he had friends over, but then I heard something else, something that didn't sound human." I stared at her in disbelief, waiting for her to laugh, to say it was a misunderstanding, but her expression only grew darker. Then, around midnight, the lights went out all at once. I looked out my window and saw shadows moving inside his house, but when I checked again, it was completely still. No one left, no cars drove away. Just silence. My chest tightened as dread consumed me. What had happened to my son? Was he hurt? Kidnapped? Worse? I grabbed my phone and tried calling him, but the line went straight to voicemail. I checked the bedrooms again, the closets, even under the bed, my voice cracking as I called his name over and over. Nothing. The neighbor stood frozen near the door, whispering to herself, "This isn't right, it's not safe here." I wanted to tell her she was overreacting, but the truth was, every bone in my body screamed that she was right. The air inside the house felt heavier by the minute, like it was suffocating us. And then, just as I was about to call the police, we both heard it. A faint creak. Not from us. From upstairs. I remember standing in that silent, empty living room, my heart pounding like a drum in my ears while the neighbor's urgent words still echoed in my head. She kept pointing down the street, breathless, her face pale with worry, and although she was speaking quickly, all I could latch onto was the phrase, "your son," and "trouble." It was as if time itself slowed, and I could hear nothing else but the rustling of leaves outside and the creaking of floorboards beneath my hesitant steps. My son had always been the type to call me, to reassure me, to never let me worry, and yet here I was in his home, a home that suddenly felt stripped of warmth, filled only with unanswered questions. The kitchen was spotless but not lived in, a half-empty cup of coffee on the counter, as though someone had been interrupted in the middle of sipping it. I could smell faint traces of his cologne in the hallway, a reminder that he had been there, but that reminder only deepened the gnawing panic inside me. As I followed the neighbor out into the yard, my eyes scanned everything, the open gate that swayed lightly in the breeze, the faint tire marks on the gravel driveway, the strange quiet that seemed too heavy for such a familiar street. She explained that she had seen unfamiliar men near the house the day before, standing across the road with their dark vehicles, pretending to check their phones but never really leaving. She said she thought maybe she was overthinking it, but then she saw my son leaving last night with one of them, and something about the look on his face told her it wasn't his choice. Every word she said clawed at my chest, filling me with a mix of fear, confusion, and anger. My legs felt like they would give way beneath me, but something stronger, maybe a parent's instinct, kept pushing me forward, demanding that I uncover the truth. Together, we searched around the property, checking for anything out of place, and that's when I noticed a crumpled piece of paper wedged between the front door and the frame. With trembling hands, I pulled it out, and as I read the hastily scribbled message, my blood ran cold. "Don't trust anyone. If you're reading this, it means I couldn't stop them. They want something from me, and if I don't give it to them, they'll come after you too." I dropped the note, my vision blurring with tears, but I forced myself to stay upright, because collapsing wasn't an option. The neighbor's hand gripped my arm, her voice shaking as she whispered, "We have to act fast. He's in danger, and so are you." It was in that moment that the weight of everything crashed down, and I realized I wasn't just a parent visiting their child anymore. I had just stepped into a nightmare I didn't understand, and there was no going back. That night turned into the longest night of my life, and as the hours stretched on, every shadow outside the window felt like an intruder, every sound in the silence felt like a warning. I sat at my son's kitchen table, the neighbor across from me, both of us staring at that note like it might offer answers if we stared long enough. My phone buzzed constantly with calls from friends and family, but I couldn't bring myself to tell them what was happening. Saying it out loud would make it too real. Instead, I clung to fragments of my son's voice in memory, his laugh when he used to surprise me with visits, the way he always said, "Don't worry, Mom," with that confidence only he could muster. But now, worry was all I had, and faith was the only thing holding me together. I started retracing every conversation we'd had over the last month, looking for clues. Had he mentioned new people in his life? Had he hinted at any trouble? And then I remembered. A few weeks ago he'd laughed nervously when I asked about his work, brushing me off with, "It's complicated, Mom. I'll explain later." At the time, I let it go, but now, those words felt like a warning I hadn't recognized. The neighbor urged me to go to the police, but fear held me back. What if the men who took him had connections? What if going to the wrong person made things worse? The note had said not to trust anyone, and that thought kept replaying like a broken record. Suddenly, headlights swept across the living room as a car slowed in front of the house. My heart nearly stopped. We ducked behind the curtains, peeking out to see a black SUV idling at the curb. A figure sat in the driver's seat, motionless, just watching. Minutes ticked by like hours until finally the vehicle drove off, but the message was clear: whoever had my son was watching me too. That realization shattered whatever denial I had left. I couldn't wait for answers to fall into my lap, I had to fight for them. That night, under the dim glow of the kitchen light, I made a silent promise to my son: no matter who was behind this, no matter what it cost me, I would find him. I wasn't just a mother anymore, I was his only hope. And as fear hardened into determination, I knew this was only the beginning of a battle that would test everything I thought I knew about him, about myself, and about the lengths love could drive someone to go.